You're on CYInterview.
I'm Chris Shandek, featured columnist Jay Billstein is with me today on CYInterview. We welcome boxer Shane Mosley Jr. Last week, he was victorious in his latest bout against Jeremy Ramos. Shane, thanks so much for being with us on CYInterview this evening. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, we're grateful to have you, no doubt about that. We always enjoy talking with the boxers and the athletes and the people who get it done in the ring. So, I just want to start out by saying to you, every sport is dealing with their own challenges related to the coronavirus pandemic. Can you speak about what the process was like training for this fight, and what was it like to fight during what's going on in the world?
Yeah, of course. The process of training was fairly normal. Of course, as an athlete, you figure out what you need to do, and you get it done to the best of your ability. So, of course, gyms aren't allowing as many people in the boxing gym. Sometimes I would have to go work out outside or run on the track or different things, but my coaches and I made the adjustments necessary in order to, get the job done. As far as preparation for the actual fight, with all of the testing and things like that, I believe like 2 or 3 weeks before the fight, I started my coronavirus testing, and we tested like every week. And then a few days before, we tested like twice before the actual fight. And then when we're there getting weighed in at the press conference, everybody is 6 feet away from each other. It's very interesting because, for fighters and boxing and the boxing community, everybody's usually super duper close to each other. We're very cluttered and things like that. So to see the first fight back with Golden Boy, everybody kind of, spread apart and doing the social distancing and things like that was very different. Oh, as well, we also got like a quarantine. So the first night when we actually got there, we checked in and went directly to our rooms and waited for our coronavirus test to, get in there. So we couldn't talk to anybody the very first night. And then the day of the weigh-in, we also got tested and everything like that again, just to make sure everybody is good for the fight. And meals were prepped, and just they took all precautions necessary in order to get this fight going smoothly.
Well, thank you for taking me inside what I'd like to call the boxing bubble. I'm sure you know that the NBA is going through their own bubble in Orlando right now. I just have a curious, very quick question. How many times do you think you were tested leading up to the fight?
I would say 5 times.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's probably like in what, a 2 to 3 week period?
Yeah, 3-week period.
Okay. All right. So then moving forward from that, I just want to say, obviously with what's going on in the world, was there any cause for pause for you to get back into the squared circle?
No, there was no cause for pause for me. This is how I make a living. This is how I feed my family. So when the opportunity presented itself, I prepared myself the best way that I could, try to stay away from as many people as I could, get tested and things like that. But, that's kind of a part of the game. You got to play, you got to know the rules and then play the game accordingly. But, no, absolutely not. I'm a fighter, and I'm going to fight through this.
Absolutely, that's great. So before I throw it to Jay, one more question. How did it feel? This is the first fight where you were part of Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boys promotion. What did that feel like?
It was a pretty surreal experience to be a part of the Golden Boy banner, to be a part of the group, and to be able to fight on their first card back with the coronavirus was a pretty big thing for me. And then to know that my fight got bumped up to the co-main event was a pretty incredible experience. So my first fight back, I got to fight on the co-main event of a pretty large card. So it was a big deal for me, and I think I put on a good performance and a good showing for myself. So it was a great experience.
Jay?
And also, Shane, although this evening is about you, your famous father fought Oscar De La Hoya twice and defeated him twice, did he not?
Yes, he did.
So was that, by the way, have you met Oscar or not?
Yes, I have. I've known Oscar ever since I was a little boy. I mean, obviously, they were on the Olympic team together. They fought. Being in Southern California and being a part of the boxing community, it's very small. So you see these guys all the time. So I've met Oscar on multiple occasions. We've talked before, and when I joined Golden Boy, we obviously had a conversation and things like that. He was very welcoming. He seemed very excited about having me on board. It was very welcoming, and I was actually taken by surprise by that. I didn't know how things would play out with that, but the whole team was very welcoming, and obviously they were willing to put me on a co-main event on their very first card back from this pandemic. So it means something to me that they would do that. So if there's any hard feelings, I don't notice it.
No, I can understand that. I would say this, and I'm sure you can amplify the sentiment. There are a lot of gentlemen in the sport of boxing, particularly the fighters. They get in there, they train their hearts out, they work with each other in the gym, they're sparring and what have you, and they fight their hearts out. And, if there are a lot of hard feelings between many boxers, I'm really not familiar with it. Maybe you are, but I think of some of the great rivalries, and those rivalries led to a lot of respect, no?
Absolutely. And if there are any hard feelings or things like that, when people fight, after they fight, there's a different level of respect for that person. You build like an admiration or a love for that person. Even if you beat them or they beat you, whatever the case is, you still have that respect because you gave it your all and they gave it their all. And you put it out there, and you put all your skills and everything out on display, and you respect that as a fighter. So if there's any hard feelings, you leave it all out in the ring, and it's left there.
I think for that reason, obviously, boxing is a dangerous game, but it's also a noble sport. And I think part of the nobility of it is the fact that two people face off in a ring, and that's it. And, the better man, fight-wise that evening comes out of it on top, but it is all left in the ring, I think at least usually. And it leaves us at a good place to make a segue. Boxing is often known as the hurt business. Now, most folks think about the hurt that takes place in the ring, and for anybody who's never been punched in the face and punched in the face with a glove, I can attest it's a very unpleasant experience. I was no boxer myself, but did put the gloves on a few times and didn't like what I felt. I have a friend, good friend, who was an amateur boxer, used to say it was like you get punched in the face and the blood starts going in the mouth. It was like sucking on a copper penny. I mean, it's just it's a tough experience. That being said, let's talk about the other part of the hurt, the training. You are, by the tail of the tape, 6'1", correct?
Yes, I am.
And you are currently a middleweight, which means that the range for middleweight is what, 154 to 160, 160 pounds tops?
Yeah, 160 pounds tops. It's 154.1 and above.
Okay, so you have to weigh in at 160. What do you walk at, Shane? What is your walk-around weight?
No more than 170 pounds. 75 pounds, I'm sorry. in between 170 and 175, around there.
Talk to us about your training, because here you are. You'll be 30 years old, I believe, in December. You're 6'1" tall. That's a big guy. You're not a small man. And to be able to maintain that weight at 170 and then to cram it down, of course, to get down to get on the scale. Talk to us about what the training entails. A lot of people only think about, whatever it is, 6 weeks leading up to a fight, 8 weeks leading up to a fight. Share with the audience really what the dedication is, if you will.
Oh, man. So during training camp, it's about 6 days out of the week is 2-a-days. So we have, let's just say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is going to be training with my coach as far as like mitts, bag work, floor, things like that, floor work, shadow boxing, things like that. And then on the later on that day, we'll have a long run. So that'll be anywhere between 3 to 5 miles. And then on, or it can be the track work. So that could be also track work as well. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is going to be strength and conditioning or something of that nature, as well as sparring on those days. So we got a super duper packed week, 6 days a week, 2-a-days, and usually altogether it's somewhere around the realm of 4 to 5.5 hours, somewhere around there, depending on how everything goes. But so it's hard work, to say the least. And then obviously you got to recover, so you do things like stretching, meditating, ice baths, things like that.
So this is a business of hurt. It's a business of perseverance. And if you want to be on top of your game and really head to somewhere very good inside the sport, it's fair to say it's constant training. It's not simply training leading up to a fight. It's really, really very, very rugged. That being said, turning from training to style, do you feel that a boxer picks his style? The style picks them? How did you come by your style? And just to take a step back, of course, for listeners, some boxers box tall, they box orthodox, there are boxers who box out of a Philly shell. How did you come by your style, and do you feel you chose it or it chose you?
I believe that my style chose me. I mean, being a man that's 6'1", super duper long arms. I have a 77.5 inch wide reach, so I have a really long wingspan for my height. So I'm a boxer. So I use the ring. I use my jab a lot, and I think that chose me. I like to box, man. So, of course, every now and again in a boxing match, a fight breaks out. So that means, more of a brawling style every now and again. But that is more of my mentality, because I will not allow somebody to try to punk me, of course, in the ring. Of course, if you try to come at me hard, I'm going to give it back to you the same way. And I'm able to do that with my mentality. But for the most part, I do enjoy boxing and the art of hit and not get hit, because I can do that with ease.
Yeah, and I think really this brings up the age-old skill versus will debate. And I have to say, I mean, first of all, I always find it at boxing matches somewhat funny in a sad way. You see some guys 3-4 rows back, gigantic stomach, tiny little arms, look like they can barely breathe, yelling at a guy in the ring that he's a bum. And I say to myself, these guys, I'd like to put these guys on a heavy bag for 3 minutes and see if hey, forget the heavy bag. Hold your arms up for 3 minutes. See how that works out. Forget about getting hit. Just hold your arms up for 3 minutes, and then when you're on the floor ready to have a heart attack, then talk to me about who's the bum. But that being said, people always talk, people in the know in boxing and fans and so forth, a lot of us talk about skill versus will. It's my position that you can't get in the boxing ring without will. It's not possible. Anybody who steps into a ring and is willing to put themselves in front of that kind of hurt has to have will. But I'm a great believer in skill over everything else. I mean, of course you need conditioning, but it sounds like you go down that path as well. Am I right?
Absolutely. I believe skill will trump will. Of course, you need the willpower. You need the work ethic and stuff like that. Because if you don't have that, you just have the skill. You don't have the work ethic, then you're not going to get that far either. But skill and will together is a masterful combination. It's the reason why we have guys like Floyd Mayweather, Muhammad Ali, things like that, because those were guys, Sugar Ray Leonard, guys with skill and will. The guys that were able to work really hard and also have that skill and technique and those great moves and great understanding of the ring. So they put it all together, and you have masterful performances, you have masterful boxers, and you have a masterpiece, really.
I have to ask you, have you ever, you're so well spoken, you're so eloquent, have you ever considered working behind a mic? I mean, look, we know that many people in the fight game forget about once they get to a point where they're going to stop fighting as much or they're going to retire. Plenty of need for some good commentators out there. Not only are you a superb fighter, you really seem to have a very articulate grasp of the game. Any thought to what else in the fight game you might do besides fight, of course?
Well, right now I don't put too much thought into that because I don't want to think too much about the long-term game, because I don't want to miss the now. I don't want to miss on opportunities and things right now. But of course, I absolutely want to stay in the boxing business. I want to build up my sport. I want to be in an advocate for the sport. So of course, things like commentating or managing or something along those lines, I most definitely will give back to my sport. And I have kids as well, so I would want them to understand boxing. I don't want them to definitely be fighters. I would never want them to be fighters. Like, I'm actually gonna avoid. I'm gonna tell them that they can't fight if they're living with me. But that's besides the point.
Did your dad say that to you?
No, he didn't. My dad was more passive when it came down to fighting. He had the understanding of, if you're going to do it to the best of your ability. He never forced me or never said yes or no, but he said, if you are going to do it, you got to do it. You don't play boxing. The famous line, you don't play boxing. That he told me that. So, of course, me always being around boxing and things like that, and going to fights and seeing fighters and being around world champions and things like that, it was very easy to get into the world of boxing. And then once I did, I found my love and passion for the sport. So that's where I lie with that. But it's a tough game. It's a tough sport. Not just the sport itself, but everything that goes into it. You never know when you're going to fight. There's always uncertainty. There's things like you got to find the right people, find the right team, and not everybody has your back. So I wouldn't want them to do that. They can do, if they want to be in boxing, they can do things like manage or they can be in the sport some other ways, but I wouldn't want them to be fighters.
I don't extend this sentiment to Oscar De La Hoya. He seems to me like a good guy. However, it's an interesting sport. I don't know if you ever heard this, Shane, said about soccer and rugby. They say that rugby is a thug sport played by gentlemen, and soccer is a gentleman sport played by thugs. In boxing, the gentlemen who are beating their brains out, they're inside the ring, and the guys who are somewhat less gentlemanly, unfortunately, often they're some of the folks outside of the ring who are kind of running the sport and putting it together, no?
It would seem that way. It would seem that the people that are not so gentlemen are outside of the sport. But
not everyone. Not everyone. There are exceptions.
Absolutely. There are exceptions, and for that we respect and love those guys that are advocates for the sport, advocates for the fighters, and try to give the best opportunities for the fighters. We love those guys, but there are some guys out there that are not that way.
100% true. I do agree with you. The friend I was talking about earlier on, he used a great phrase in regards to boxing. He said, "Boxing is kinetic chess," and he is a very bright fellow. And one thing, and I'll kind of close with this, and I'd love your reflection on this, and then like to hear what's up in store for you in terms of your career. I'm sure good things. I haven't met anyone who is a particularly proficient boxer who's not also intelligent in some way. This is another thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. The mastery of movement calls for a certain type of intelligence that must be high. It is not something that just anybody can do at a high level. I think people can train well, they can get into good shape, they can learn some basics, they can put on gloves, but to be at the level you're on and to keep going up, it's an endeavor for somebody who doesn't just have the physicality but the mentality as well. Reflections?
Yes, I absolutely agree that you have to have intelligence when you are working at a high level in the sport of boxing. Any sport for that matter, I do feel like you have to have a high level of intelligence because you have to put all of these pieces together, as well as you have to think on your toes. You have to be able to use your mind and then tell your body what to do in a split second. That's why they say, when kids do like plyometrics at a very young age, or things like gymnastics, they have a higher possibility of being have a higher IQ because your body and everything is working in motion together, and you're clicking everything together at once.
You know what you're talking about, Shane. We have on a good friend to CYInterview, a neuroscientist who comes on from time to time. It'd be great if she were here, because what you're really talking about is the plasticity of the brain, right? And when you train at doing something again and again and again, you're creating something called a neural groove. So, after you've thrown that jab 10,000 times and 10,000 times well, the brain develops a very specific pathway, and I think you're 100% right. Somebody who's younger, the brain is exhibiting greater plasticity, and they can develop, for lack of a better term, more boxing intelligence.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with that, and I would love to actually listen to her thoughts and get some more information on that. But I just really got that from my own experiences, and for what I see, that people that have more body awareness or things like that seem to be more intelligent. And then another thought when it comes to boxing or any sport for that matter which a lot of people don't talk about, is emotional intelligence, which you could have everything going wrong in your life, but when you walk in that arena or you walk, on that floor, you need to be on point, and that takes a lot of intelligence. That takes a lot of understanding of yourself, understanding of a lot of different things, because a lot of times when people get into a nervous situation, their body shuts down or their mind shuts down. You get into a lot of things where you get that deer in the headlights kind of effect, and you can't have that when you get to a high level of any sport, whether that be, NFL, hockey, that could be, boxing, whatever the case is. When you get in that arena, you got to be firing at all cylinders. And so it takes a lot of emotional intelligence as well. You have to know yourself and know what you're capable of.
Well, Shane, you're impressive in the ring, and you're certainly impressive out of the ring, and I'm looking forward to great things for you. What are you looking forward to right now? Give us the 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Where are you headed?
So 3 months, hopefully we have another, I would have fought one more time. 6 months, maybe positioning myself for a top 15 situation, and then in a year, I'll be in the top 10.
Your mouth to God's ears. I look forward to it. Chris Yandak, Shane Mosley Jr., a very, very impressive young man, impressive young boxer, and really somebody who I think we can look forward in the future, not to only share his gifts in the ring, but to share his gifts out of the ring as well. Shane, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Chris?
Shane, in closing, I'd love to ask you one last question. I mean, as you decided to become a boxer, what was the best piece of advice that your father gave you?
The best piece of advice my father gave me was, no situation is good or bad. It's what you do from where you're at. So if everything is going wrong, or whatever the case is, or quote unquote wrong, it's what's your goal, and what do I have to do to get to that goal? It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. I got to get to my goal. So I think that was some very great advice, and absolutely great in this time.
Oh, no denying that. So for boxer Shane Mosley Jr., featured columnist Jay Bilstein, and CYInterview, I'm Chris Yandak.